Welcome back to ABC General Hospital. Spoilers channel. Today we will learn about the explosive developments hitting Port Charles this Wednesday, December 3rd, as lives hang in the balance and relationships reach their breaking points. Kevin's surprise homecoming. Laura Collins finds herself caught completely off guard when she swings open her front door to discover her beloved husband Kevin standing on her doorstep. Having just returned from his extended stay in Dublin, the psychiatrist arrives, bearing not just his suitcase, but a stunning bouquet of fresh flowers, his way of showing Laura just how much he's missed her during their months apart. As Kevin flashes that familiar warm smile and utters those tender words, "Hello, beautiful," Laura feels her heart skip a beat, momentarily forgetting the darkness that's been consuming her thoughts. This marks Kevin's first appearance back home after several lone months away. And while the reunion should be nothing but joyful, the seasoned therapist immediately picks up on the tension radiating from his wife. His trained eye catches the shadows beneath her eyes, the tightness around her mouth, the way her smile doesn't quite reach her eyes the way it normally does. The horrifying discovery Laura made just days ago continues to haunt her. Finding Henry Dalton's lifeless body stuffed inside her car trunk sent shock waves through her entire being. And in that moment of pure terror, Kevin was the first person she desperately tried to reach. Now, it appears that her frantic phone call has prompted him to cut his Dublin trip short and rush back to her side in person, demonstrating the depth of their connection and his unwavering commitment to supporting her through this nightmare. Kevin won't waste any time before gently probing into what's troubling his wife, using all his professional expertise, combined with his intimate knowledge of Laura to help her process this traumatic experience and the dangerous web she's found herself entangled in. Brooklyn's mother-son crisis. Brooklyn. Quartermain's face betrays her mounting anxiety as Joe Polly delivers what sounds like devastating news with those 5 simple words. "I don't want to do that anymore." The budding relationship between these two has been slowly blossoming over recent weeks and months, with Joe gradually opening up and accepting Brooklyn's maternal presence in his life. The breakthrough moment when he finally called her mom for the very first time left Brooklyn floating on cloud 9, feeling like all her efforts to connect with him had finally paid off in the most meaningful way possible. So, naturally, hearing him express reluctance about something triggers immediate panic within her. Is he backing away from their newly formed bond? Is he retracting that precious mom label that meant the entire world to her? However, the actual context of Joe's statement remains somewhat ambiguous and open to interpretation. The conversation could very well be centered around the dangerous plan to break into Henry Dalton's mysterious laboratory, assuming they can even locate the secret facility that's proven so elusive thus far. Breaking and entering carry serious legal consequences, and Joe might be developing cold feet about crossing that particular line, especially given everything else happening in Port Charles right now. Alternatively, his reluctance might stem from relationship troubles with Dante Falconer, who recently unleashed another verbal assault on the young man for his role in getting Rocco Falconer mixed up in trouble. According to reliable General Hospital spoilers, Brooklyn will ultimately throw her support behind Joe on whatever decision he's wrestling with, suggesting that, despite her initial worry, she'll respect his boundaries and back his judgment call. Their mother-son dynamic continues evolving in unexpected ways, with Brooklyn learning to balance her protective instincts with giving Joe the space to make his own choices. Drew and Willow's wedding drama over at Drew Kane's residence. The atmosphere crackles with tension as Willow Tate stands deep in thought while her groom-to-be boldly declares his intentions to the world. Drew's voice rings out with fierce determination as he announces that absolutely no force on earth will prevent him from marrying the woman who has captured his heart completely. His defiant statement comes loaded with significance, especially considering that just moments before, Michael Corinthos was spotted lurking outside the property, his face pressed close to the window as he peered inside at the pre-wedding preparations. Michael appeared to be wrestling with his own inner turmoil, possibly contemplating whether to storm into the ceremony and voice his objections when the officiant asks if anyone has reason these two should not be wed. Yet, according to what unfolds, Michael doesn't stick around to play the role of wedding crasher, instead retreating from Drew's property before making his presence known to those inside. But the real question burning in everyone's mind centers on Willow herself and whether she's experiencing serious doubts about proceeding with this marriage. Her mother, Nina Reeves, posed some pointed questions to her earlier in the day. Questions that seemed designed to make Willow reconsider the wisdom of rushing into matrimony with Drew. Even more telling was Willow's conspicuous silence when Elizabeth Baldwin looked her directly in the eyes and asked the straightforward question of whether she felt truly ready to become Drew's wife. Willow couldn't bring herself to answer, which speaks volumes about her internal conflict and uncertainty. Despite these red flags, she did follow through with getting dressed in her beautiful bridal gown and made her way to Drew's living room where the ceremony is set to take place. She even shared some genuinely sweet bonding time with Emily Scout Corderine, Drew's daughter, who will soon become her stepdaughter if this wedding actually happens. The touching interaction between Willow and Scout showed the potential for a loving, blended family. Yet, Willow's pensive expression suggests her mind remains far from settled on this life-altering decision. Michael's mysterious meeting. Michael Corinthos has relocated to what appears to be either an upscale restaurant or possibly the Brown Dog Bar, where he's arranged a meeting with Justinda Bracken, who's wearing an unmistakably disappointed expression on her face. The vibe of their conversation carries all the hallmarks of a relationship ending with Michael expressing regret as he tells Justinda that he wishes circumstances had been different when the two of them first crossed paths. The timing of everything has clearly worked against whatever connection was developing between them, and Michael seems to be acknowledging that their involvement was perhaps doomed from the start given all the complications in his life. Justinda's sad demeanor reveals that Michael's words are hitting her heart, suggesting she may have developed deeper feelings than she initially anticipated. Several possibilities exist regarding what transpires during this meeting and what follows afterward. Could Justinta be the one who ends up presenting Michael with some kind of tempting proposition or offer that changes the game entirely? Or will some other unexpected development occur while they're together at this location that shifts the trajectory of Michael's day? Another scenario involves Michael having left Drew's house in response to receiving an urgent phone call that demanded his immediate attention, which would explain his sudden departure from spying on the wedding. Regardless of exactly how events unfold, one thing remains crystal clear. Justinta is nursing a broken heart over whatever Michael is telling her, and their relationship appears to be reaching its conclusion just as suddenly as it began. The disappointment etched across her features tells the story of another potential romance that couldn't survive the chaos and drama that constantly swirls around the Corinthos family. Trina's family. Betrayal. Trina Robinson finds herself spiraling into an absolutely foul mood after being blindsided by not one but multiple devastating revelations about her family in rapid succession. First, she witnessed her father Curtis Ashford locked in a passionate kiss with Jordan Ashford, his ex-wife and Trina's former mother figure, a sight that sent shock waves through her system. As if that weren't enough to process, she also overheard a conversation revealing that her mother, Portia Robinson, is pregnant. News that apparently everyone in the family knew about except for her. Being kept in the dark about something so monumental and life-changing has left Trina feeling excluded, disrespected, and furious with her relatives for their secrecy. Her anger and hurt bubble over when she encounters Stella Henry. And rather than maintaining her usual respectful demeanor toward her great aunt, Trina lashes out with barely concealed hostility. The cutting remark she delivers, "It sucks to find out your family's keeping secrets from you, huh?" carries layers of pain beneath its sarcastic surface. Trina had accidentally eavesdropped on Stella discussing Portia's pregnancy news with Marshall Ashford, which is how she discovered she was apparently the absolute last person in the family loop to learn about her future sibling. The revelation that she'll be getting a baby brother or sister should be cause for excitement and celebration, but instead it just adds to her sense of betrayal and isolation to pile even more complications onto Trina's already terrible day. Just as she was steeling herself to confront Curtis about catching him kissing Jordan, the police arrived at their location with questions about Drew Kane's shooting. The investigation into who pulled the trigger on Drew has expanded to include Curtis as a person of interest, adding a criminal dimension to the family drama. General Hospital spoilers hint that Trina will soon be having intense discussions with Kai Taylor about whether they should come forward to the police with what they know, though doing so would immediately make both of them suspects in the shooting as well. They find themselves trapped between staying silent and potentially obstructing justice or speaking up and painting targets on their own backs. Curtis under interrogation with Jordan having either departed the scene or possibly choosing to remain nearby to offer moral support, and Trina having stormed back inside to escape the suffocating situation. Curtis Ashford now faces a tense confrontation with Detective Nathan West, who has arrived bearing uncomfortable questions Earlier in the day, Dante Falconer had specifically assigned Nathan the task of bringing Curtis in for official questioning after thoroughly reviewing the complete list of individuals who might have had motive, means and opportunity to shoot Drew Kane. The investigation has widened considerably, and Curtis's name has emerged as someone who warrants closer scrutiny from law enforcement. The problem Curtis faces is that his alibi for the time of the shooting is remarkably weak and virtually impossible to verify through witnesses. He claims he was sitting alone at the Savoy, his nightclub, drowning his sorrows in alcohol and solitude while the shooting occurred elsewhere in Port Charles, without anyone present to corroborate his whereabouts during those critical hours. Curtis's story sounds convenient at best and suspicious at worst. One would reasonably expect that a man with Curtis's background, a former police officer who later built a successful career as a private investigator, would have installed comprehensive security camera systems throughout any business establishment he owns. Surveillance footage from the Savoy would immediately clear Curtis's name by providing timestamped video evidence of his presence at the club during the shooting. Yet, there's a potentially complicating factor that might explain any reluctance to turn over security recordings. The Savoy's basement previously housed an illegal poker operation, and Curtis might have concerns about what else could be visible on those tapes. The question now becomes whether Curtis can produce the electronic evidence to support his alibi, or whether his inability to do so will elevate him from person of interest to prime suspect in the attempted murder of Drew Kane. Nathan West isn't going to accept vague explanations and uncorroborated stories, which means Curtis needs to come up with concrete proof of his whereabouts fast, or he could find himself facing serious charges that would destroy everything he's built in Port Charles. Next, we will learn about the troubling decline of Elizabeth Weber's prominence on General Hospital and why this legacy character deserves so much more than what she's currently receiving from the show's writers. The legacy being wasted. Elizabeth Weber stands as one of the most distinguished characters in General Hospital's storied history, carrying the bloodline of Port Charles' founding family. Her connection to Steve Hardy and Audrey Hardy, the legendary couple who essentially built the foundation of what General Hospital represents today, should guarantee her a permanent spot in the spotlight. These weren't just ordinary characters. Steve Hardy was the very first character to appear on General Hospital when it premiered in 1963. And Audrey Hardy became an iconic matriarch who embodied everything the show stood for across multiple decades. Their granddaughter should be commanding major storylines and driving the narrative forward. Yet, recent years have seen Elizabeth relegated to the shadows, appearing only when the writers need a convenient supporting player for someone else's drama. The disrespect to this heritage is staggering when you consider that the Hardy name literally gave General Hospital its legacy and cultural footprint in daytime television. Instead of honoring this incredible lineage, the show has systematically dismantled Elizabeth's importance, stripping away her agency and reducing her to a mere background fixture in a town her family helped establish, reduced to a supporting player. Over the past several years, Elizabeth has been systematically transformed from a leading lady into a prop designed solely to elevate other characters' storylines. She's been positioned as the perpetual shoulder to cry on for Finn, offering endless emotional support as he navigated his various crises and romantic entanglements. She's played therapist and confidant to Lucas, providing wisdom and compassion whenever he needed someone to validate his feelings and choices. Most recently, she's been locked into the exhausting role of Willow's best friend, a position that requires her to constantly set aside her own needs and experiences to focus entirely on Willow's never-ending relationship problems and family conflicts. This pattern has become so predictable that fans can anticipate exactly when Elizabeth will appear on screen. Whenever another character needs a sympathetic ear or a pep talk to move their own storyline forward, the writers have essentially converted a complex multidimensional character with decades of history into a glorified supporting actress whose primary function is to make other people look good. This transformation is particularly glaring because Elizabeth herself has so many untapped story possibilities, so many unresolved relationships, and so many emotional wounds that could fuel compelling television if only the writers would give her the attention and development she deserves. The failed childhood mystery. The most recent attempt to give Elizabeth her own storyline. A mystery surrounding traumatic childhood events involving her parents perfectly encapsulates the problem with how she's been handled lately. What should have been a powerful, emotionally resonant exploration of repressed trauma and family secrets instead fell completely flat, delivering a payoff that left viewers confused and unsatisfied. The build-up suggested something significant and life-changing had occurred in Elizabeth's past, something that would recontextualize her entire character and explain certain patterns in her behavior. Instead, the resolution felt rushed, underdeveloped, and ultimately inconsequential to her present-day life. The writers seemed more interested in checking a box. We gave Liz a storyline than in actually investing in the emotional journey and giving it the time and nuance it required. This half-hearted approach only highlighted how far Elizabeth has fallen from her glory days when she was the central figure in some of General Hospital's most memorable and emotionally powerful arcs. The childhood mystery had real potential to restore her to prominence, but the lackluster execution demonstrated that even when she gets a storyline, the commitment simply isn't there from the writing team. The glory days forgotten. There was a time when Elizabeth Weber was absolutely central to General Hospital's most compelling narratives, particularly during the era when Lucky Spencer, Emily Quarter, and Nola's Casadini were all active presences in Port Charles. These interconnected relationships created a web of drama, romance, betrayal, and redemption that kept viewers invested. For years, Elizabeth's romance with Lucky was the stuff of soap opera legend, young love tested by addiction, family dysfunction, and devastating losses. Her friendship with Emily provided some of the show's most touching moments, demonstrating female friendship with depth and authenticity. Her complicated dynamic with Nola's added layers of tension and possibility that kept storylines unpredictable. During this golden period, Elizabeth wasn't just reacting to other people's stories. She was actively driving the narrative forward, making choices that had consequences rippling throughout the entire canvas. Her decisions mattered. Her emotions registered as important. And her presence elevated every scene she inhabited. That version of Elizabeth seems like a distant memory now replaced by a hollow shell who exists primarily to facilitate other characters' journeys, rather than embarking on meaningful adventures of her own. Fan frustration reaches boiling point. The general hospital fan community has become increasingly vocal about their dissatisfaction with Elizabeth's treatment, taking to social media platforms to express their anger and disappointment. One particularly passionate viewer articulated what many feel. Elizabeth Weber is original lead protagonist Steve Hardy granddaughter. She should always have her own story line, and it's ridiculous she's reduced to nothing more than a shoulder to cry on for other characters and their story lines. This sentiment captures the core frustration. A character with this much history, this much legacy, and this much potential should never be relegated to supporting player status. Another exasperated fan specifically called out the Willow dynamic, writing, "Please free Liz from being Willow's bestie. Unless she's going to start getting real blunt with her." This comment reflects a growing weariness with watching Elizabeth endlessly support Willow through her various dramas without ever getting anything meaningful for herself. The relationship feels one-sided and exploitative, using Elizabeth's inherent kindness and nurturing nature as a crutch for Willow's character development rather than allowing both women to have equal importance in the narrative. The missing children. Perhaps nothing illustrates the neglect of Elizabeth's character more clearly than the complete absence of her 3 children from the canvas. Elizabeth is a mother. That's a fundamental part of her identity and should provide endless storytelling opportunities. Yet Cameron, Jake, and Aine are perpetually off-screen, mentioned occasionally in passing, but never actually present to interact with their mother or contribute to her story lines. This is particularly baffling because the show has no shortage of young adult characters driving various plots. Elizabeth's sons could easily be integrated into the canvas in meaningful ways. Instead, viewers are expected to simply forget that Elizabeth has this entire other life as a parent, despite the fact that her role as a single mother navigating the challenges of raising 3 boys in Port Charles should be rich territory for dramatic storytelling. The complete erasure of her children from the narrative doesn't just diminish Elizabeth's character. It strips away one of her most defining characteristics and eliminates countless potential storylines that could showcase her strength, her vulnerability, and her fierce maternal instincts. Disrespect to a veteran actress. Beyond the character assassination of Elizabeth Weber, there's a larger issue of respect for Rebecca Herbst, the talented actress who has portrayed this role with dedication and skill for an astonishing 28 years. Herbst has proven herself capable of handling any material the writers throw at her. Comedy, tragedy, romance, suspense, and everything in between. She's demonstrated remarkable range and emotional depth across nearly 3 decades. building a character that resonates with multiple generations of viewers. Yet, instead of rewarding this loyalty and talent with substantial material, the show consistently relegates her to the margins, using her sparingly and superficially. As one frustrated fan eloquently stated, not letting the single mom nurse be an actual on-screen mom is such a massive mistake on the part of GH. Just a complete waste of talent and disrespectful of a great vet. This observation cuts to the heart of the matter. Is not just bad storytelling. It's a failure to properly utilize a valuable asset and to show appropriate appreciation for someone who has given decades of her life to this show. Herps deserves better, and so do the fans who have followed Elizabeth's journey since she first arrived in Port Charles as a troubled teenager all those years ago. The continued marginalization of Elizabeth Weber represents one of General Hospital's most glaring missteps in recent memory, squandering legacy, talent, and storytelling potential in favor of keeping a beloved character boxed into an increasingly limiting supporting role that serves everyone except Elizabeth herself.